Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donald Jones. I am a partner at NXST. I want to welcome you all to today's conversation. I am beyond excited and thrilled to be talking about the intersection of small business and workforce development. I've actually spent my entire career in that space. And so I'm really thrilled to share with you kind of a culmination of some great work that our team has been doing in this space. I first want to thank the James Irvine Institute for sponsoring the report and supporting our work. Before we move into the discussion about the report, I first wanted to just share a little bit about Next Street. Boundless opportunity. That's our mission. It is to help every small business realize their potential. And we do this by helping our clients understand what small businesses need. And we design and develop solutions to connect small businesses to the right resources at the right time. A key input into the solutions we develop is our research. So this report continues and expands kind of a long tradition of cutting edge research that Next Street has done to really expand what we know about small businesses and how we can build a more fair and just economy where all small businesses, particularly those in underserved communities, can thrive and grow. Nationally, our work has reached over 4 million small businesses and helped redirect $5.5 billion in capital. Small businesses are connected to a broader ecosystem, and so setting them up for success enables them to create quality jobs and build stronger communities. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Spencer Lau, to tell you more about our report. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Donald, and hello, everyone. As Donald mentioned, my name is Spencer Lau, and I am a director at Next Street. At Next Street, I led the team that conducted the research that we'll be sharing with you all today, alongside my colleagues, Samela, Jessica, and Annika. I'm especially excited to be here as we release this seminal report, as I myself am a Californian born and raised in an Asian American small business family. And from this experience, I know firsthand that small businesses are engines of the state's inclusive economic growth, particularly in communities of color and how they're historically underestimated communities. Small businesses like my parents' community pharmacy promote economic opportunity for entrepreneurs and workers and foster community identity and impact. However, many small businesses and workers in California face systemic barriers and growing economic inequality that have been magnified since the COVID-19 pandemic. Progressively, California has become a tale of two states, one for those who have benefited from the California dream and the state's economic growth, and another for those who have been systemically held back due to just their status and circumstances. As we emerge from the pandemic, this is widening a chasm and has forced a conversation about the qualities we seek from work and the accessibility and benefits of a good job. This conversation is central to Next Street's mission and is the backdrop of our study on the role that small businesses play in creating quality jobs for California's low-wage workers. This study, as Donald mentioned, has been made possible by the generous grant support from the James Irvine Foundation and in collaboration with many of you, community and industry leaders dedicated to the state's small business and workforce development. Over the next hour, we'll be walking through our research and have two speakers from the small business community to share their perspectives and firsthand experiences. From there, we'll open it up to a Q&A about the study's findings before closing out with next steps and a call to action. On behalf of the Next Street team, I want to reiterate what Donald said, to give our thanks to you all for attending this session, and we look forward to sharing our work and a robust dialogue to follow. And so, before we begin, we did want to pose a couple of questions to you all about how small businesses and quality jobs are really intersecting in California. And so we're opening up a Zoom poll to pose a few questions to you all, with the first question being posed, from your perspective, what are the key components of a quality job? For each of these questions, we'll give you all a minute to answer the question, and then we'll report back the results. So take a minute just to answer, and then we'll report back. Right. So from that question, a few key characteristics and components have risen to the top, namely focus really on living wage and basic benefits that are critical for job quality. And so as we continue in our presentation today, we'll really dive into all of these different components of what really makes up a quality job and how that intersects with small businesses. As a second question, based off of that, we want to ask you all, what do you think are the top challenges for small businesses in providing quality jobs in California? Select your top three and we'll report back. Okay. So it looks like the real winner for all of this is access to capital and financial management, which you'll see from our study as well has been a key focus area for a lot of businesses, as well as general business planning, strategy, and operations. There's also some focus on some other things like acquiring talent and things like navigating government regulations. So with all of that, last question for you all. What support resources do small businesses commonly leverage to manage and foster growth? Say that perhaps they're missing the music that's tied to this. We'll give folks a few more seconds before we report back. All right. So it looks like a lot of folks mentioned friends and family, as well as other things like banks and financial institutions, as well as their accountants. And some also highlighted small business development centers or SBDCs as well. So want to just thank you all again for sharing your thoughts on the definitions on what really constitutes a quality job and the intersection with small business. All really aligns actually with a lot of our report findings. And so now we'll dive into the specific findings. As I mentioned, Jessica and Samela are key members of our NXST team who led the research for our report. And so I'll now pass it over to them to walk through the presentation of our summary of report findings. Samela?
Thanks, Spencer, and hi, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today. So I'll dive right in, but to develop a comprehensive understanding of the role that small businesses play in economic mobility and quality job creation, we wanted to understand the state of small businesses in California and its relationship with small businesses and low-wage workers. So the two main questions we worked around were, one, to what extent do small businesses in California create quality jobs for its owners and workers? And two, what are the needs and potential solutions for supporting small businesses across the spectrum of stages, industries, and regional ecosystems in offering quality jobs? To understand the spectrum, we looked at the ecosystem of stakeholders across the state to understand the assets and gaps of the provider landscape. We focused on the state of California as a whole with a secondary focus on priority communities. So looking at Fresno, Inland Empire, Salinas, and Stockton. To conduct this study, we applied both quantitative and qualitative methods of research. We started with a literature review and data analysis. And then to further support these findings, we conducted almost 34 stakeholder interviews with folks across the small business sector. We also held multiple focus groups with small business owners and employees in Los Angeles, Inland Empire, Fresno, Stockton, and Salinas. We surveyed almost 230 small business owners and employees to really understand small business owner and employee perceptions. And then to validate our findings and solutions, we organized 2 steering committee sessions with 14 stakeholders representing different communities across California. So as we move on to the next slide, we can look at where we started with our research. So we know that small businesses are critical in driving California's economic growth. There are over 4.3 million small businesses in the state, accounting for 99.9% of all businesses in California. 93% of these businesses are micro businesses, so less than 9 employees. Small businesses play a crucial role in job creation and account for 53% of the total workforce, and also continue to be a primary driver of net new jobs. However, we know that small businesses face significant impact and challenges because of the pandemic. And as a result, over 30% of businesses were forced to close and scale back operations. And while there have been signs of notable recovery in California with revenues and new establishments slowly returning to pre-COVID levels, small businesses continue to struggle with inflation as well as shifting labor conditions. So it becomes really important to evaluate the state of small business landscape and how it varies when they're evaluated through the lens of ownership, demographics, industries, as well as their business stage. We move on to the next slide. We can identify some key themes and takeaways that came out of our study. So today, more than 4.3 million Californians are employed in low-wage work, and a majority of these workers are BIPOC and women. These jobs lack stable working conditions and also limit workers from growth and moving towards economic mobility. Since the pandemic, there has been a mind shift, and workers now view work differently and also seek livable wages, stability, and flexibility. So this pursuit of job quality and mind shift has also stirred a desire for autonomy and folks to start exploring entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship provides this pathway for small business owners to really leverage their business as a means to provide for their families, improve work arrangements, and a route to autonomy and flexibility. This is incredibly impactful in building self-sufficiency amongst low to moderate income as well as BIPOC communities. And these pathways also have the ability to provide more flexible and equitable workplaces, really increase wealth and savings, more job satisfaction overall, and foster closer relationships between managements and employees. Additionally, more local businesses and hiring positively impacts local communities and economies. However, when addressing the question, to what extent do small businesses in California create quality jobs for their owners and workers, we found that small businesses really struggle to create quality jobs in financial dimensions such as wages and benefits. They also often lack formal human resources departments as well as expertise for their employees. So in order to be able to grow sustainably and provide better benefits to their workers, small businesses need support in key areas such as access to capital, customers, and services. We need to better equip them to expand access and provide employee support, and thus intentionally create quality jobs for their employees. I am going to hand it off now to Jessica, who will break down the components of quality jobs and also why they're so important to the growth of small businesses. Thank you.
Thanks, Mela, and good afternoon, everyone. Again, so excited to speak to this report and to the research done here. And as Mela mentioned, a key part of this work is really defining quality jobs and in what ways small businesses play a role in providing for those, particularly as it relates to low-wage workers in California. And as we also had answered as part of those Zoom polls, we recognize that the traditional view of a quality job focuses purely on this financial dimension, namely wages, benefits, and our definition really recognizes that the quality of a job encompasses a lot more than that. So for our research, we adopted frameworks and built upon a lot of that substantive research from the Aspen Institute, from Pacific Community Ventures. And so we understood one, job quality as a continuum. So this is recognizing that jobs are not easily separated into good jobs or bad jobs, but rather an actionable continuum of moving from some low quality to higher quality. And then second, some key components of that job quality beyond wages and benefits also encompasses wealth building opportunities, career building opportunities, and fair and engaging workplaces. And so this was really the framework that we built upon for our research and really understanding where small businesses were able to provide for those. And at a high level, what we found is to what Samila was saying, that small business owners do face challenges in creating quality jobs when evaluating purely against some of these traditional financial dimensions. So namely wages, benefits, but when we're considering the full spectrum of quality jobs, the workforce environments, the opportunities for economic mobility, small businesses are really a critical lever in providing these quality pathways, especially for low-wage workers via fair and engaging workplaces and these career and wealth building opportunities, both to its owners and then also to its employees and the jobs that it creates. And finally, our focus groups really emphasize that the quality is determined by a foundation of job security, respect, flexibility, of which many workers did find at a lot of these smaller companies. I'll push us to the next slide to also note that our research also recognized that the small business in California do vary widely in size and capacity for growth, while also experience common journeys and problems arising at similar stages of development. And so small businesses, what we refer to here as at maturity, have the sustainability and stability to better dedicate resources to create these quality jobs for its owners, for its workers, and then also for the communities in which they operate. So reaching maturity is often the goal of small businesses and obtaining a level of resource stability. And however, an entrepreneur's journey to sustainability and maturity is often marked by stages, which we've outlined here. So namely, startup and early stage businesses are often focused on the self-sufficiency and personal income for the founder. Whereas for sustainable and mature businesses, it can shift its focus on providing for its staff via wages, benefits, wealth sharing, career development. And so namely here, a distinct shift does occur as small businesses move from survival to growth stages, and as they're able to focus on scaling job creation and community wealth. We note this because it has implications in meeting small businesses where they are as part of their journey and supporting their path to maturity, and what that means both for the owner, the businesses, and the workers, and the jobs that they provide for them. Another thing that I'll note as I push us forward to the next slide too, is they also recognize that these journeys really differ distinctly for these core, what we refer to as these core small business industry segments. This is again an adaptation of a framework from the Harvard Business Review, but it recognizes these distinct needs for these segments. And just to provide a high level overview here, for Main Street businesses, who we traditionally think of local small businesses, for example, local restaurants, retail shops, often community-based with operations in a certain place. High-growth businesses are these fast-growing, high-scale potential, what we refer to as tech startup, or for example, it could be what we think of as tech startups. Supplier businesses are really specific to the orientation of supplying to government or businesses and have facilities. And so, for example, this can refer to construction, manufacturing, transportation companies. And so our assessment really highlights some of these core differences in quality jobs across these industries, implying some of these targeted interventions for which we can really fill these distinct needs in creating quality jobs. For Main Street businesses, they do account for nearly half of the firms in California, a high representation of the workers that they employ, and specifically a high representation of BIPOC workers and owners, and also a high concentration of low-wage workers. They often do lag in comparison to high growth and suppliers in offering these quality jobs across all the dimensions, so particularly wages and benefits. And so this really speaks to some of these lack of resourcing that is available to Main Street businesses and a need to support them in providing some of those quality jobs in that respect. For high growth businesses, they are more likely to offer quality jobs through wages and good benefits, but are often inaccessible and inequitable workplaces for low wage and BIPOC workers. And then finally, for supplier businesses, a key component here is that supplier industries are increasingly driving employment. So there's high rates of job accessibility. So this really indicates an opportunity to influence quality job creation for low wage workers in these segments. And so we have a full set of data and research and implications that we highlight in the report, but wanted to highlight some of those key components there. What I do want to push us forward to is thinking about the solutions, and our solutions recognize what Samela had mentioned at the top of the presentation. That is to effectively support quality job creation for low-wage workers. Small businesses are going to be core to that strategy. But to support small businesses, we will need to address gaps across both small business needs and workforce needs. So on one hand, small businesses require capital, customers, and capabilities to be able to offer and build their own capacity and providing the quality jobs and to reach maturity. So this includes improving access and quality to capital, business support, and market opportunities and challenges channels. And then on the workforce side, small business workers require resources to obtain and contribute to quality jobs. So this encompasses the requirements to connect workforce, supports to access to jobs, and to providing targeted supports such as skills training and development to the workforce. And then underlying each set of needs are policy solutions that would create a regulatory environment that best supports small businesses and workers and providing, obtaining, and maintaining quality jobs. Again, a full set of solutions and specifics and examples around this are also detailed out in that report. So I know we'll have time for Q&A at the end of this session, but what I wanted to do is I'll pass over to our colleague at the James Irvine Foundation. And this will be Asusana Favela. She's a senior program officer with the Irvine Foundation's Priority Communities Initiative. In her capacity, she supports grant making in the Inland Empire, and she was a key thought partner on the report. She's based in Los Angeles and has worked in government in the nonprofit sector, supporting small business funding and programming. So thank you, Asusana. I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. And today I'm tasked with introducing one of our guest speakers, Dr. Cassandra Little. Before I do that, I would like to publicly thank the steering committee members on behalf of the foundation for their support and wisdom during this process. I'd also like to commend you all, the small business serving organizations. Because of you, many small businesses and local economies survived the pandemic. And because of you, government was able to quickly get out emergency funding into their hands. So I'm grateful for your commitment and recognize it was a very challenging period for your organizations. So today we are joined by Dr. Cassandra Little. Since December 2021, Dr. Little has been serving as the CEO of Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce. Dr. Little brings a long history of entrepreneurship and commitment to economic equity to the chamber. She's owned and operated an executive coaching service supporting small businesses in California and Nevada. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Little.
All right, thank you. Again, I want to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of the Next Street information giving on that report, which I think is going to be very, very crucial to helping us moving forward on this, this heavy lift that we all have, but together, I'm one who is hopeful. I think that we can continue to get the work done. Like was said, I am the CEO of Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce and Chamber Foundation, and I did come into this role right in the midst of the shutdown, which posed a lot of different challenges for our small businesses that were already struggling and entrepreneurs who were already having a hard time, navigating the space. So we, for the chamber, we just kind of moved immediately into, making sure that our businesses had the opportunity to still receive the services that they needed. And so, like everyone else, we pivoted to providing services virtually. We know that, in the fabric of our society, each thread is integral to the strength and beauty of the tapestry we create together. Yet some threads are stretched thin, bearing the weight of systemic inequalities and economic disparities. Our small businesses and entrepreneurs are, for our community, the backbone of our economy, and are, often find themselves in being that stretched threads, struggling to make ends meet in a world that moves forward oftentimes, without them. So, for us, the question for us is then not just how we create opportunities, but how can we build sustainable pathways that lead from low wage positions and struggling businesses to economic stability and prosperity for all, and especially in our priorities communities. Here at the Chamber, we know that this task is monumental. We know that it's ongoing. But I believe, and my team believe that it's far from insurmountable. Um, and we know that with our strategic partnerships and innovative thinking and unwavering commitment, as well as having what I call a trauma-informed support, we can forge pathways together. Our businesses need more than just funding. I always say that. They need more than just accelerators. We really have to develop a strong ecosystem around our businesses that are, not that when times do become challenging, that we are their foundation, and that's what the chamber holds true to. For me, we know that the world is evolving rapidly with technology, innovation. We have the infrastructure bill going on, a lot of dollars coming to communities, and and it's going to be important for us to continue to invest in our small businesses, and be intentional about the techno assistance programs that we're providing, and that making sure that they're tailored and they're providing, like I said, trauma informed support, so that our small businesses can also access some of the, I say the riches that are going to be coming from these emerging needs of the market. With some of those skills, we can equip our small businesses with tools that they need to thrive. Like I said, we know that it's not an easy task, but over the past few years, I found that it is doable with support, and commitment and real access to capital. I have to keep saying, I am an entrepreneur. I've been in this space for a long, long, long time. This being a part of the chamber is new to me, and understanding that you shouldn't have to bootstrap your businesses. You should, particularly business of color, and intentionally, because I am the Black Chamber, Black businesses should have a clear path to access to capital. And we're, even with all the millions of dollars that have been out there, the numbers are still saying the same thing. So I'm always questioning, what do we need to do different? And so to me, it's not just enough about providing the accelerators. We need to provide real, honest access to funding, whatever that takes, and eliminate some of these structural barriers that are put there, these rules that we know that our businesses are not going to be able to meet. Some of the policies, they're just not. No matter how much work we provide and how much support we provide, our businesses are not going to be able, because they don't have the history to do that. So this year I've committed myself to just being frank about, if we don't change how banks operate, CDFIs operate, and really fund our businesses, this is just going to continue. And we're just funding agencies to do things to go in circles. And so for me, we will continue to embark on this journey towards empowering our small businesses and our entrepreneurs. And that, just with the understanding, my motto is that the success of our community is measured not by the wealth of a few, but by the well-being of many. And our priority communities really hold, untapped potential, resilience, and the spirit of perseverance that can enrich our entire region. And we know that entrepreneurship and small business is one of the true, real ways to be able to access to economic mobility. So, in closing, I just want to call upon each of us to, continue to play a part in this vital mission, whether it's a business leader, a policymaker, a concerned citizen. Our voice and our actions and commitment can make a difference. And we can build the pathways that lead to not just economic stability for our entrepreneurs and our businesses and the party communities, but to a future where every entrepreneur and small business have the opportunity to achieve their fullest potential. I would also like to take this moment to thank James Irvine and encourage them and other philanthropic communities to continue to be brave and fearless and creative. That's what it's going to take, and how communities and small businesses of color are supported. And I also want us to put more pressure. I don't know how that looks, so on some of our funding agencies, and relieve some of the pressure on some of our CDFIs so they can really fund some of our businesses creatively. We have to be creative. Otherwise, we're using the same rules that have applied historically that we know that don't work for our businesses. And one thing that make me crazy is constantly hitting my head. If I'm hitting my head, then I know my small businesses and entrepreneurs are truly struggling. So, and on that, I'll end and I'll say thanks again for the report, and for letting me be a part of this Next Street webinar. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Little, for your insights, your commitment to the work, and really all that you do for the Fresno community, as well as the Fresno Metro Black Chamber of Commerce. I think a few things that really were powerful is just that intersection between capital, technical assistance, and the structures that you mentioned, and really what that means in terms of building ecosystems as we proceed forward to best support small businesses across all of California. And that also is a pretty nice segue into our next speaker, Brian Kennedy Jr. from Impact Business Capital. Brian is the Ecosystem Director at Impact, which serves small businesses in the Inland Empire. Since 2021, he has overseen Impact's Business Resource Center and coordinates opportunities for entrepreneurs to get the growth resources they need. And prior to Impact, Brian has a long history working in other impact fields, including higher education with student success. And so, Brian, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Spencer. And thank you so much to the Next Street team. Thank you so much to the James Irvine Foundation for such a collaborative initiative. Because as we've had this conversation so far, you've seen a lot of this work is about us working together. And so I'm grateful to be a part of this great choir of impact makers and grateful to sing the same song. I'll chime in on a couple of points that I have slated to speak about, just some of the work we're doing in the Inland Empire, and some of the policy implications for small business owners. As an introduction as well, my work with the Impact Business Capital has really shown me how access to capital, access to community, and access to coaching really does come together. For a little bit of context, Impact Business Capital is an SBA CDC, Certified Development Company, as well as the U.S. Department of Treasury CDFI. So when you talk about that community lending, that non-bank capital provider, we represent that from both sides of the federal designations. And so how we have built this entrepreneur ecosystem is around the capital ecosystem, because there are multiple parts of it. But I'll speak a little bit about some of the work we're doing. With the entrepreneur ecosystem, AMPAC is trying to advance its mission of creating champions of job makers, which are the small business owners. And we know if we can intentionally support our small business owners, we are driving economic opportunity and empowerment for our small business owners, but most importantly, the communities, the employees, and the families that make up the small businesses. And so with some of the things we're doing, we really brand it under the mantra of it is possible. So a lot of the time, business owners need inspiration. They need somebody to believe in their dream. And with Impact Business Capital, we've created cradle to legacy loan products that do that, from the $5,000 microloan that you've heard us talking about to the $30 million commercial real estate acquisition loan that business owners need to be able to stabilize their operations and grow and scale. And so seeing business owners create wealth is what we do. I was just sharing a story with one of my bank colleagues about how we supported a business over the course of 4 years to go from $100,000 in gross revenue to now at 12 million and looking to buy a building. That's serious wealth creation through the great equalizer that is entrepreneurship, with just the right capital ecosystem, right? The right coaching ecosystem and the right community ecosystem around them. And so I'm happy to share a little bit about what it is possible means for us here at Impact Business Capital and how we love supporting our champions of job makers and creating wealth and creating pathways for economic parity. On the other side of my comments, I want to make sure that I can touch on a couple of public policy highlights. And when we saw this opportunity with what Next Street is doing, you all don't understand. And I hope that this report is clarifying, but it's so true. And I'm going to call out one of the points from the report as I step into some of the public policy highlights that I want to share briefly. But this report, as you all are continuing to hear about, has showcased how enterprises with 1 to 500 employees are really crucial, especially here in California. And we have to foster entrepreneurship and expand this quality job creation. And some of the public policy initiatives around that are significant. And as a SB lender, as a CDFI, we're not a public policy agency, right? We're just a lender. We do loans to business owners, and that's it. We have to stay in front of this stuff because it affects the work we do, and most importantly, affects our clients, our communities, our small business owners who are impacting so many families in so many communities. And so we are excited to report that last Friday, Congress did approve their $460 billion spending bill, averting a partial government shutdown. We're still waiting for a final approval, but we've seen some good news that that is on the horizon. In tandem, while Congress endeavors to finalize their fiscal year 2024 funding, President Biden also released the White House fiscal year 25 budget request, which is totaling at an SBA requested $971 million, which for context is up 25% from last fiscal year. We get all of this federal policy data from our federal policy partner, Small Business Majority. They're a great colleague in doing this work and really help us bring this federal legislation down to the local level where we can actionize it for business owners. All this means is that we're going to be able to continue to do the work of advancing entrepreneurial dreams through capital, coaching, and community. And we're going to continue to do it intentionally. There have been dollars coming down around the Community Navigator Pilot Program, the SBA Growth Accelerator Fund, as well as some of the minority business development agency centers around the country, but specifically in the state. All that means at the local level is access this $17 billion that the state does in government contracting per year. And there are ways to do it, and there are communities to support you doing it. And if we can be a part of that journey, we're grateful to. Those are some of the pieces I wanted to cover. I know policy is like, what? So I won't take up too much time with so much fun stuff, but we want to be an advocate for you in every way possible. Next Street team, thank you all for your amazing work. And thank you all for this time today. Such a joy to do this work alongside you. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, for those insights and your continued commitment as well. And I think a few things that really were resonating was just how important small business is in terms of wealth creation, and the way that you mentioned that entrepreneurship as an equalizer is really something in which I know that we all believe in at Next Street, as well as was really highlighted through the report. And also want to also highlight the dual element here of really the specific work that you all are doing at NPAC, as well as what this means in terms of a macro level and how that ultimately impacts small business as well. So again, just huge thank you for being here and for your partnership as we develop this report. So as we move forward, now I want to open it up to questions from you all. I know that there have been a few questions in the Q&A section that we wanted to open up, and Sumila has been reviewing these questions to elevate select questions from the audience that we'll be answering. So Sumila, maybe I'll pass it over to you.
Yes, thank you. So I can read out the first one. So Sumila, I mentioned inflation issue as a challenge. Can you unpack that at some point in terms of responses elevating that issue from those you interviewed or surveyed? I can actually take that, and then I think Annika and Jess can also add on since they were a part of the focus groups and surveys. But I think one of the main concerns that came out from folks was they were still struggling to kind of recover the debt and loans that they had taken out since COVID. And then with rising costs, it was a struggle to kind of fulfill the increase in costs, so whether it was purchasing supplies or inventory, et cetera. And I can also read out a quote from one of the focus groups that as an immigrant, it is very difficult for me to ask for a loan. I went to several places to ask for a loan and nobody wanted to lend me money. If you do not have residence or paperwork, loans are not accessible. So I think a few key things that came out was one, there was a fear of debt and just asking, but then the other was how do we even get access to that capital? And then the third was just education, right? And understanding how to prioritize those funds and where to allocate them, especially with rising costs. Annika or Jess, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, exactly. I think the only thing that I would add is part of our research also included statewide ecosystem analysis, and part of that was around the capital landscape. And so obviously on the side for capital providers, inflation and the broader macroeconomic environment, it does have such a big influence in, rising interest rates and the amount of loans that can be, issued out at flexible terms for small business owners. And so it's almost on both ends of it is you're funneling in the lower amount and decreasing the amount of available capital products for small businesses. And then as Samila was mentioning too, just the cost of running a business. So it's really on both sides of that. And it is that broader just capital landscape environment that is a core challenge. And thinking about how you can manage and address that is a core issue that we call out.
Okay. Also, as I said, and Brian and Dr. Little, if you guys have anything to add here, please feel free to chime in as well.
Thank you. I wanted to definitely chime in. There are ITIN lenders, and this goes back to the capital ecosystem. It's a community of lenders. There are multiple CDFIs here in the state of California. I know Access Plus Capital might be one of them that are in this room today, but you have people who want to work with you. It's simply who you know. And so we're grateful that there's spaces like this where we can share who are the right people to talk to, but continue to leverage your network. And please, most importantly, don't be afraid to ask, because that's the only way you're going to find out anything, right? I think the good book says you have not because you ask not. So don't hesitate to ask. Thank you.
Okay. So why don't we move on to the second question? So did the issue of small businesses' unreported cash income as a barrier to growth come out in the research?
Start with that and then go from there. So one thing that we really were trying to highlight in the research is that small businesses ultimately are going through their own respective journeys, in that in large part, that journey can start at different points where there's some degree of business informality that is quite frequent in how a business might be able to start up. Ultimately, an entrepreneur is looking to really realize their dreams around what this means in terms of what their business might look like, but not all of them are starting from the same starting point in terms of what cash they have on hand and what type of management expertise that they might have with respect to that. And so through our study, we really tried to dissect both sort of the starting point and what that means in terms of a low-wage worker or a BIPOC worker to consider entrepreneurship as an avenue for their own economic destiny. And then as a result of that, what that means in terms of trying to support those businesses to go from some degree of business informality to formal businesses. Which ties into cash on hand, which also ties into having legal structures in terms of their actual business as well. And I know in thinking about and speaking with a lot of the ecosystem, that there is a lot of work that's being done as well to help support those businesses to get to a place of really establishing themselves as well. Anything else you would add?
I would like to chime in on one piece of that, just because when we're talking about reporting, that's half the battle in this capital ecosystem, and how you showcase your numbers is really important. So if you think that your tax filing is just, if there is a business owner in the room, if you're thinking your tax filing is just something for your accountant to do or something for your tax preparer to do, please make sure you know what's happening, because what is reported is what can be linked to. Thank you all for calling that out. It is a critical point.
I'd also pose the question to Dr. Little and see if this challenge comes up with small businesses in your experience.
Can you repeat that question?
Can you
again?
read
I'm
the
sorry.
question? Yeah. Did the issue of small businesses' unreported cash income as a barrier to growth come out in the research?
Yes. I think that posed a huge issue for us. Along with a lot of our businesses during that period was we had to get them up to code in a lot of ways there. A lot of them were doing what I call the underground economy. And so a lot of our businesses kind of were able to access even some of those dollars till later in the game. And by then it was, um, some of the money they were able to get were minimal. So yes, that posed a big challenge for our businesses. And so part of our program, the accounting, finance, any kind of business legal, that's part of our ecosystem now. All of our businesses have access. I just had a meeting with my team this morning on, okay, contact our businesses that have gone through our accelerators, just send out notices that it's time to do your business financials, it's time to do your taxes. Let's get this, in order. And because what'll happen is, when things do go on a downturn, that's the last thing our businesses want to do is go in front of an accountant. But like I said, if they don't keep up on that, when it comes time to be able, when things are swinging up or there's opportunities, then they're not in position to benefit from those. So that's what we're trying to prevent. And that's the part of where I said that having a strong ecosystem and being trauma informed, knowing that these are the things that create barriers for our businesses and getting in front of that for businesses that, that want to participate, we provide that opportunity for them.
Great. Thank you so much. So why don't we move on to the next question? How has AB5 contract and reclassification impacted small businesses, especially since it went into effect just a few weeks before the shutdowns?
I can start. So it's a really great question, especially since right before the shutdowns, that bill, which essentially reclassified how employees are counted for small businesses, respectively, as independent contractors. And where we saw this as both a challenge and consideration for businesses is really oriented towards sort of the emergency response that happened during the pandemic, where quite frequently we had seen a certain employee count requirement that because of this reclassification, it led to some businesses either to be eligible or ineligible, depending on the actual grant program as a result. In addition to that, it also shifted how those respective contractors also were potentially getting potential resources as well. And so it had impacts in terms of what that response is. And as things move forward, it is really a question in terms of how we really pose the question back to public policymakers around what it means to be defined as both a business itself, as well as what that means in terms of the downstream impacts on employment for access to resources, access to financing, access to potential opportunities outside of it. But I might also encourage Brian or Dr. Little if there are any other points that you would make as well to chime in.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to, because this is why I mentioned some of the government contracting and the minority business development agencies, because to fulfill a government contract, you need to have capacity, right? These types of legislation pieces are really important because when you bid for contracts, they are going to ask how many employees versus independent contractors. And so simply put, if you didn't understand that before, this is the time to get help and understand it, so you can take advantage of some of the opportunities out there. Like I was sharing, 17 billion in annual contracts go to business owners in the state of California alone. So the opportunity is there. It's just how do you navigate your ecosystem to take advantage?
Well, that's perfect, Brian. And for us, I think, advocates and as an agency that, I task us with, being the forefront of that information is making sure that our businesses have that information. Not just the information like, okay, you need to do this because that's the law, but this is just like Brian explaining how you're going to benefit from from doing that. And showing how, you know, a lot of people are, you know, reluctant to do that, a lot of businesses, because they feel like the costs are going to be higher, taxes are going to be higher, that actually they're losing money. Um, or not able to take advantage of some of the tax breaks. And so that's one of the biggest things that, you know, I think that we've had to change, is working on mindset. When our businesses come to us, the first thing we focus on is the mindset. It's like, okay, if you're a business, we got to shift the mindset. And I mean, that's part of our being trauma informed in regards to care. It's just a lot of our businesses. I'm just believe is when you know better, you have an opportunity to do better. And so just kind of, you know, doing that advocacy and education is helpful, and showing them the bottom line. You know, so that's important.
Thank you. So one more question. California has one of the highest minimum wages in the country, which I think is a positive thing over the long haul. But many complain that high minimum wages put small businesses out of business. Any truth to those claims? With Brian, you want to kick it off?
I love this question a little bit because of our mission of being champions of job makers. When you talk to most small business owners, why do they start their business? Right, to provide for their families, yes. To fulfill a need in the world, yes. And when they start hiring people, you ask them what they're doing this for. It's for the people who they are employing. I can share that as a mantra of the company. I get the joy of work for today, impact business capital, and people want good people to stay committed to them. And you have to pay people, and you have to make sure people are taken care of with retirement planning. This is a critical part of growing a business. And we talk about this with our startup companies too. You have to be able to sustain yourself as well, even if you don't for that first period of starting up. But you have to plan for people, because what is business? People. And you have to be able to continue to advance the people who are advancing your business. So I definitely love championing that message. And amen to the chat, surviving versus thriving. Absolutely.
I also think in our focus groups, high minimum wages wasn't necessarily a concern that came up, but it was an overarching concern of, well, we need to have enough to be able to provide benefits and support our employees. So it wasn't this specific element that came up as a concern, but it was a more kind of a broad concern. I think Dr. Little, did you want to add something?
No, I think you just hit it. I don't know, it's like wanting to be able to provide that, you know, all those services, and more than just a livable wage. I mean, I understand that that's our, you know, that's kind of our baseline. But I mean, you know, even at the chamber, I always tell I hustle for my team. That's why I hustle. I hustle them, you know, make sure that they, you know, they can have benefits, that we can cover all those things. And you know, I believe that's what all our small businesses that have employees, their goal is to be able to do those things.
Absolutely. So we have about 5 minutes. I know, Spencer, you wanted to talk about next steps.
Yeah, I see that we have a couple more questions. Perhaps we can
take one more.
Take one more.
Okay, sure. Do you know of any resources that specifically focus on narrowing down by industry focus? For example, restaurants versus beauty versus roofing, really digging into industry focus versus general.
Ryan, you want to start? It seems like you were chiming in. I can also start too. Yeah, there certainly are industry-specific resources that are out there. And you know, I think that the thing that we were realizing through the report is that there's both a need for that general business support for a business to be able to get to some degree of business stability, and what that means for the real work to get a business to a certain point. But then after they get to that point in their journey, that the question really is ultimately, if you're a food service business, how is this actually related to how I build up my restaurant? Or if I'm a contractor for construction, that there are specific resources that are needed in terms of bonding or insurance on that front. And so, I think overall, we saw that there's an evolution of how not only small businesses are seeking services, but also what the ecosystem across the state really has. That said, also recognize that that is an area in which, as you think about what is possible for next steps and what is a call to action for folks, that might be an area to continue to build out, because industry-specific supports is an area that not only within California, but across the country is less available in comparison to some general business service. And so as a result, it's something that, as thinking about dedicated steps to best support not only policies, but programs, that's an area to really build out and to ensure that there's appropriate resourcing and funding as a result.
Yeah, and thank you for kicking that starting point right where I was hoping you would land, because the resources and support, a lot of the times we just don't know about. And to that question specifically, I definitely recommend checking out the Small Business Development Center. They have a lot of industry-focused support programs, and a lot of the CDFIs that we've been talking about today, leverage and make sure you're connected to those programs too. Can I answer these last two questions? I know we're pressed for time, but my heart.
Go for it. Do you want me to read them out quickly?
No, I'll read them as I'm talking about them, but I
Okay.
see Ms. Harwright Smith was asking about ensuring back-end support is provided for business owners and maybe sharing models for success. One of the models that I know we're aiming to build more community around is our entrepreneur ecosystem. It's just an Impact Business Capital and App Store. Has a lot of good resources, but we're always trying to add more community members to it. So if you all want to use that as a model and build from it, we'd be grateful too. I know some of our other CFI partners, so some really good stuff they're doing. So it's, once again, it's just knowing who's in your community. And then for natural disasters and risk management, so there's a lot of work in this space, a lot of businesses that do this work from a contracting perspective. And I'd be happy to share some contacts as well. And so I love seeing folks asking about such a critical piece. Natural disasters and risk management, it's never going anywhere. And there are a lot of people that do that work. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for answering those. I think we have about a minute and no more questions. So we're able to get to them all. And I will hand it back off to Spencer to discuss next steps.
All right, thank you, Samela. And just thank you to everyone for your attendance and active participation in today's session. I also want to give a special thanks to the James Irvine Foundation again for your generous support for this report, as well as Dr. Little, Brian, and our partners across the state for your support in this research. I also want to give a shout out to my team and huge appreciation for your incredible work on this report. We've been sharing the link throughout, and we'll continue to share the link after this webinar in a follow-up email in the coming days. It also will include a recording of this session so that you all have it. But as we conclude, we want to leave you all with a call to action to support California's small businesses and workers towards economic mobility. I think throughout this conversation, we mentioned that there really is a role for each and every one of us to play. And here is what we really want to highlight is that for each of us, that we have opportunities from small business providers, calling you all to understand and design programs for historically underserved businesses and their workers. And for funders, calling you to really aggregate and consider how to invest in small business and workforce ecosystems and solutions to best support quality job creation and retention through small business. For conveners, call for you to facilitate and continue to form collaborations and coalitions around these regional ecosystems. And last but not least, of course, we've talked about policy throughout this whole discussion, and we know that you all have some role to play in terms of advocacy. We call for you all to champion small business voices and advocate for public policy reforms tailored to small business and worker needs. Overall, just want to thank you all again for taking the time here. And just a huge appreciation for everyone. And we really believe through this report, as well as the work that everyone on this panel has been doing, that together that we can build a more fair, just economy for all small businesses and workers in California to have an opportunity to grow and thrive. So thank you all again, and have a great rest of the day.